everybody, welcome to Lessons with Troy, the podcast. I'm your host, Troy Brenningmeyer. Today's guest is musician Steve Tylka. In today's show, Steve talks all about his journey from a student's perspective into Hawaiian music and the Hawaiian Lap Steel guitar. He also discusses the blog he writes for musicians just getting into Hawaiian Lap Steel, which can be found at www.steeltrappings.com. He also shares about his time in the military and about how playing the Hawaiian Lap Steel has really been therapeutic in helping him cope with his P.T.S.D. and music therapy programs he's been a part of that offer help to other veterans like S.O.A.R, which stands for Sounds of Acoustic Recovery. For more information about S.O.A.R, you can visit their website at www.soundsofacousticrecovery.com. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy the show. And remember, if you want to learn more about lap steel, dobro, Weissenborn, and more, be sure to check out my site at www.lessonswithtroy.com. Hey everybody, welcome to the podcast. It's been a while, but welcome back. Today's guest is Steve Tylka, all the way from Clarksville, Tennessee. Hey Steve.
Hey, aloha, how's it going?
Aloha, good. Yeah, I've taken a break from doing podcasts from a little bit, but it's good to be back, recording again and to have you on the show. And tell people, the listeners, a little bit about yourself if you can.
Okay. Well, I'm living right now out in Clarksville, Tennessee. I'm originally from California, from Orange County, California. While I was growing up, I was actually completely enamored with steel guitar. It was so different than what we would see here in the mainland. And growing up, I would catch steel guitar players here and there and just be fascinated. It would draw my attention in. I got my start actually 2 years ago playing, and I started studying under Apakah.
Yep.
And it's been an amazing journey. I absolutely love it. And I'm sure the same goes for all the viewers as well.
Yeah, so I kind of forgot to mention at the beginning of this, but Steve, like myself, is a student of Alan's, and you take Skype lessons, right? Kind of like I did?
I do, yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I see your shirt there. Let's see what your shirt says.
Yeah.
This is
So this is the school shirt for this year for Kekula Mele, which is Alan's school. And he teaches steel guitar as well as ukulele and Hawaiian style bass. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Well, what are you learning from Alan these days?
Well, since I'm fairly new to the steel guitar, we've gone over everything from proper technique to what defines the Hawaiian style in comparison to some of the other steel guitar playing styles. So the biggest hurdle that I had to get over was playing smoothly. And I still struggle with that quite a bit. Every now and then Alan will catch me and say, hey, this is a smooth piece, So I have to kind of really evaluate how I'm connecting my notes and things like that. And he's doing a great job with providing a lot of Hawaiian standards to help me develop that technique. That kind of cater to, milking the slide between notes, where I can do something like, even a 1-fret slide, Let me turn that up there. Kind of taking my time as opposed to maybe in some other styles, you would just kind of get there,
Yeah.
So it's a lot of stuff like that. And like I said, he's providing a lot of sheet music of his arrangements of Hawaiian standards that really cater to what I need to focus on playing.
Okay. Well, the other big thing that I really wanted to share with people is Steve writes articles for Steel Trappings, right? That's the website is what, steeltrappings.com?
Yes, steeltrappings.com.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you'll have to pronounce it. I'm horrible with pronouncing Hawaiian words, but what's your article called?
So my article is called Haumana, and it's Haumana means student in Hawaiian.
Okay.
So I went with this title because I'm a steel guitar student, and I wanted to make sure that I was clear that when I write these articles, I'm not speaking from the view of an expert or even a seasoned player. So when I write these articles, the subject is something that occurs to me on the steel guitar as I'm learning. So it's something I'm picking up, and I say, hey, this is something that maybe some other friends that I know who are also students might want to read about or hear about.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a work in progress, definitely. But I mean, that's kind of what we do as students. We're building as we go. So.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to have you on the show. I do have people like Alan on the show, but I like to have people that are just kind of getting into it too, so that you can see it from kind of two different perspectives. Because I think a student has a unique perspective that maybe a seasoned musician may have lost, throughout all these years and gigs and everything of playing. So that's really why, I wanted to, have you on the show, because you're great at sharing your journey really as a student of the steel guitar. And there's, students that probably listen to this that can see what you're going through and kind of get inspired by, what you're doing with the steel guitar and learning too as well, so that's why I wanted to have you on the show for sure.
Absolutely. And I appreciate that very much. It's, so I came from standard guitar, and I had a working knowledge of where steel guitar fits in arrangements, in different styles of music. But the crossover is night and day difference. Whereas a standard guitar, the more notes as quickly as you can get them there is a, it kind of defines what a lead line would do if you're soloing. You're a little bit more intricate. Whereas in steel guitar, at least to my ears, it's the exact opposite. It's what can you say with less?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the nature of the beast, just by, instead of playing with, 4 or 5 fingers, we're with a tone bar, And
Yeah.
with the exception of a few players, most of us, this is all we get, So there's a lot more thinking involved. And I've noticed for standard guitar, there's a lot of mainstream publications, Guitar Player, a vintage guitar, that talk about technique. And within that, there's different lessons for all levels of players and all styles. And one of the things that, when I first picked up steel guitar, that I had a hard time finding was somebody that would speak as a student. And I found, like, your website, Mike Neer's website, since I've started, that have articles featuring all different avenues of playing. But I always kind of thought, from my perspective, it's like, well, if I've never done this, or I've never really figured out what I'm doing, how can I express what I'm trying to learn? I guess maybe not express, but how do I speak about it?
Yeah.
And that was the goal with Haumana, was to encourage fellow student players to say, hey, we're all here, and everybody that's experienced was in our shoes at one point as well. So if we all band together and open up these conversations about the difficulties of learning this instrument, then we'll all push each other to keep going, and maybe even pull in new players.
Yeah. So speaking of that, like, what's some things right now in your playing that you could maybe, like you said, as a student, share from when you first started until now, things that you've learned from Alan, or things that have really kind of solidified in your playing, since you've kind of started with all this?
The first thing that I've really learned was how to appreciate a good arrangement. And that comes from, music or tabs, as well as the way you view a guitar. So, one thing I've learned from Alan is, if you're playing in a particular key, let's say in the key of G, you really want to kind of hang out around the 7th fret for at least the main melody. From there, you look at what you can grab chord-wise, really enhance what you're playing. And that's really crossed over into songs I've tried to arrange just for my own enjoyment, is pick up on that. And that's really opened my eyes to what's really going on the neck. I'm using the C6 tuning, which a lot of players are using as their main tuning these days. But it's kind of an interesting tuning when you look at it. It really takes a lot of thinking when you're arranging a tune. So that's something that I've really picked up from Alan is, on, like I said, coming from standard guitar, there's nothing wrong with going from the bottom of the neck to the top. Whereas a steel guitar, you might not necessarily have the time, or you might be forced to do that based off of what notes you're trying to play. So that concept really crossed over, for me anyway, for steel guitar, because, like I said, we're using the one bar. So you really have to be careful about your note selection. And that's something that has really opened my mind up. When we listen to guys like Jerry Bird, and you start hearing these note pairings that might not fit into your triads that a standard guitar player would be playing. And it really opens up the tonal capabilities of the guitar or the arrangement. Which I found really impressive. The other thing that I've really learned is how to indicate styles, or I guess determine what style a song is. So I guess what I mean by that is the difference between Western swing and Hawaiian. Where Western swing, if you take out of consideration things like tempo and maybe some of your voicings, they're really so polar opposite of each other that you can kind of, once you know what you're listening to, you can identify it a little bit faster. Like guys like Speedy West in comparison to Jules Ossie. They're two very different styles of playing from two different kinds of players. And that's something that for me as a student was kind of hard to grasp. I didn't make that distinction when I first picked up the guitar. I thought a steel guitar piece was a steel guitar piece. I didn't understand the nuances of a playing style.
I'll stop you right there just to elaborate a little bit on that, because I do play a little bit of Western swing and Hawaiian, and how would you describe each one and the differences? If you were to hear somebody, because sometimes you don't want to sound like a Western swing guy if you're trying to play Hawaiian and vice versa,
For me, the big difference, the most notable difference is the approach to vibrato. Hawaiian vibrato is very relaxed and tame, with the exception of guys like Danny Stewart, who was a Hawaii Calls era player. He had kind of a fast vibrato, and it was almost too fast, but that was kind of his signature. Then when you look at some of the Western swing guys, a lot of times the approach that I've noticed to vibrato is a little bit more playful and not as unison across the board. A lot of the Western swing steel players, in my opinion, are filling in where there would be a horn section. So if a horn, big 17-piece horn section was doing a quick chord change and maybe doing some kind of vibrato in the trumpets, that's what I hear a lot of these Western swing guys copying. And in Hawaiian, it's more essential to the playing. Maybe it's to carry the note out for 2 bars. So it's more of a tool rather than a trick in Hawaiian. That might be the wrong phrasing, but it's more Western swing. I see a lot of things like that, vibrato, and the way they approach notes as it's more fun, kind of silly, They're and it's unique to each player. So that's something that I always hear And at least that's the way it comes into my ears. It's like, oh, you hear a little bit more. They're goofing off. They're having fun. Which
Yeah.
a lot of the old Hawaiian guys, you hear that too. But it's very different. Very different. Another thing that always makes me think Western swing versus Hawaiian is chord shapes. I've noticed that a lot of Western swing players will take their chord shapes from jazz and use inversions, as well as maybe build a chord off of a chord rather than playing your over a C. They might be playing an E minor and dropping out certain notes that would clash with the rest of the band. And that really adds to the style, like Leon McAuliffe. When he would go and take solos, sometimes he almost sounded out of the box. And in Hawaiian, it's not always the case. But I noticed that there's a lot more uniformity throughout a band. It's a little bit more simple,
Yeah. That's what I know.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, that's what I noticed, when I went to Maui and Allen's Steel Guitar Festival, is that Hawaiian seemed like licks and flashy stuff that you might see in, styles of music that I'm used to, like bluegrass and this and that, where you got so-called shredders, that are just playing fast and playing hot licks, and pedal steel guys that are playing real super fast hot licks. It didn't seem like that was so far removed from Hawaiian music. It seemed like the prettier the better. It's like, oh, that guy's playing great, not because he's playing the fastest flashy licks. You can hear the melody, and it's almost like the more beautiful, like each player, I don't want to say they tend to outdo each other, but let's say what attracts them, let's say, to the audience is they're trying to play beautiful, the most beautiful that they can,
Yeah, absolutely.
With the harmonics, and it's the exact opposite of, let's say, flashy fast stuff. Like you're saying, like instead of sliding up to a note real fast, it's real smooth and then real controlled vibrato and harmonics, where you're really trying to get the best tone out of the harmonics and the best tone out of each note.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes in Western swing, I feel like, and bluegrass and some of this, like they're already going to the next note, whereas Hawaiian music, it's making that note sound as big and huge and beautiful as possible,
Absolutely.
What I hear, at least. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%. Yeah.
And that for me, it kind of carried into the personalities too of the Hawaiian musicians. When I'd meet them, they're so humble and just very, just humble people and nice. And it wasn't about bragging about what they can do or anything, just very down to earth, it seemed like,
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's been my experience with everybody in the steel guitar community that I've met and had the chance to correspond with. Is that was, for me, that was one of the most intimidating factors. Was you already know that there's a lot involved in steel guitar coming into it. There's a lot of thinking involved, and as a new player. When I first really started and kind of hadn't really figured out what I was doing, I was almost intimidated to even start to think about reaching out and asking questions. And over time, I got over that, and as I'll approach people and ask, "How do you do this?" or "What do you think about this?" and get information. Because really, there's in modern times, 2017. There's really not a lot of steel guitar players out there in comparison to other instruments, other stringed instruments. And we're in an interesting time where a lot of the old timers are kind of starting to leave us now, and we really have to find a way to push. Everybody that's involved in steel guitar now, push and keep the instrument alive. And so that's something that I always speak to my friends about is, don't be afraid to go out there and talk to people, whether it's, online or in person, because that's how we do, that's how we're going to keep these things alive,
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I was thinking about, I didn't go to the Maui Steel Guitar Fest this year. I went the last 2 years, and I was just thinking, I assume it's going to be going on for a while, but you never know. Who knows how long stuff like that goes, and I think, Alan Apakah is really a huge advocate for the instrument. I feel like with all of his festivals that he's doing, I know he travels to Japan and teaches and this and that, but these. Unfortunately, these people aren't going to be around forever, and it'd be nice to make sure that it does carry on. After they go, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I wonder about that as well. I haven't been to the Maui Festival yet, but I always watch for new videos associated with the Maui and Kauai festivals, as well as the Honolulu Festival. And it's starting to be a more dynamic group of people as far as ages go. When you see the Kanakapia, afterwards, you see everybody from, little Malie Lyman to, there's some well-experienced players, and then some older folks are coming out that maybe have been playing since the first mainland boom of steel guitar.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's such a great way to meet people, and share ideas, or learn, really learn from everyone. And I've been meaning to get out there, because it's a great thing,
Yeah.
and like you said, Alan really does a great job putting these together. And of course, out here we have the Fort Collins festival.
Yeah, I got to go to that. Have you been to that one?
Not yet. No, I'm hoping to go this year. So,
Nice. Well, maybe I'll see you out there. When is that normally?
I thought it was the end of September. I
Okay,
think
so
September 24th, maybe.
Okay. So sometime in the fall then. Nice.
Yeah.
Or I guess, early fall, I guess it would be September, October. Anyways.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the other thing I really wanted to share with people is kind of your background, as far as, you have a military background. I want to thank you, for your service.
Oh, thank you.
In the military. And just have you kind of talk about that, and also talk about how Hawaiian music and the steel guitar is kind of almost therapy, for you to kind of relax and this and that.
Absolutely. So I joined the military in 2009, and I went to the Army, and wanting to have the real Army experience, I joined as infantry, which those who may not be familiar with different jobs in the military, in the infantry, you're basically a rifleman. And at first, I thought that was great. I had military in my family history. A couple of them went the same route, did the infantry career path. I ended up deploying to Afghanistan in 2010. And it was an experience, absolutely. I got to see a different country, experience another culture. Beautiful country. A lot of the people were very, very nice. But I felt that something was definitely missing, and I was very fortunate to have my family hold on to a couple of my instruments. So they sent out an acoustic guitar, and started kind of playing on our downtime. And I really dove into Hawaiian slack key while I was there and deployed, and had the opportunity to play. And what I found in that was kind of a way to get away from everything that was going on around us. And once I came home, that interest in playing Hawaiian music continued. And it really became, like I said, very therapeutic, because I was able to put the things out of my mind, things that other veterans deal with. Some of the things that you don't realize you have issues with until you're back home and have a chance to decompress. So I went through all the things you hear about veterans. I went through a period of just being in a dark place. And I found that the more I played, the more I was able to cope with certain things. Towards the end of my military career, I was very fortunate enough to audition and get into the Army Band, where I played standard guitar. And that, of course, in my mind, really helped kind of get my head straight, kind of cope with things as well. And that was an amazing experience. We got to, play all over Tennessee and some of the surrounding states.
Nice.
And it really made me realize that music was something I wanted to pursue full time. Before I had joined, I had been going to school pursuing recording arts, and kind of got burnt out on school, and that pushed me to join the military. But right now, that's kind of what I'm getting back into.
Okay.
But through the Army Band, I was very fortunate enough to participate in a group called S.O.A.R, which was Sounds of Acoustic Recovery. And what that was a program that was started at Fort Campbell, which is out here in Clarksville. It's home of the 101st. And the group catered to wounded warriors and wounded warriors who are transitioning out of the military. And what we did was set up a weekly meeting where anybody within the Wounded Warrior Project or the associated unit on post could come and learn to play the guitar. And we were very lucky to pair up with Guitars for Vets. And a lot of the members in this program now, after they take a certain amount of courses, get to keep their guitar. And we were able to pair them up with a Nashville songwriter. And at the end of our course, and they get their guitar, they get to go down to Nashville and have a free songwriting and recording session.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was amazing. We got to see a lot of people work through some of the things that were haunting them from their military experience, whether it was how they got injured or any number of things. And there were a lot of great songs that allowed service members to express themselves. Maybe they weren't comfortable talking about their situation, but it was okay to let it out in a song. And it really helped a lot of these soldiers kind of find an outlet rather than turning to substance abuse or worse,
Yeah.
So it gave a positive way to release all this frustration and things that these soldiers were experiencing.
Nice.
And to my knowledge now, the program has actually become a 501c and is actually sponsored by Wounded Warrior and now works full-time with Guitars for Vets. And I believe it's a nationwide program now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's a great thing, and I'm very fortunate to have the chance to do that. It was definitely one of the highlights of my military career, being able to help these people that didn't know where else to go, essentially. So that was amazing. And I mean, I've really found that music in general is very therapeutic. When I have days where something kind of sets me off, or they call it triggers. If you go down to and go through the VA process, they'll ask you to identify what some of your triggers are. So if I have a day that is kind of just one thing after another bombarding me, and I can feel myself start to kind of go back into that zone, I can pick up the steel and play for a while, and by the time I'm done, I can't remember what it was that kind of had me feeling tense or, down or something like that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if there's vets out there that watch the podcast or follow steel guitar or any instrument, I definitely encourage, using music as a tool. it's definitely something that can really save people, in my opinion. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Hawaiian music, especially, has such I feel like a calming way about it. Just to even play it, you kind of have to calm yourself down to get the right sound, to like sometimes if I'm real tense and I go to try to play something, I have to almost get in a whole different frame of mind and to move my hands smoother and vibrato more relaxed and
Oh
all
yeah,
that.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I do the same thing. I mean, if I have something as simple as too much coffee, before I try and play, then it doesn't come out the same. So.
Now, did you with the program? Did you try to teach anybody steel guitar in the program?
I actually tried to start that through the program, but there just wasn't enough interest across the area we were in.
Yeah.
And to my knowledge, I was at Fort Campbell. I may have been the only one that was playing steel at the time. I have noticed that in Clarksville, there's a couple other steel players popping up. I don't know if they recently moved to town with Nashville being so close.
Yeah.
But I'm starting to notice kind of chatter online about a couple more players in town, and I have yet to meet up with them. But if they see this, I'd definitely like to. So
Yeah. Well, that's cool.
yeah,
Yeah, it tends to draw people too that have hand injuries. I've noticed. I get emails from people that, had a accident with a band, a saw or something, lost fingers, or maybe they have arthritis, and they can't play normal guitar. Maybe they played normal guitar before, but now something's wrong physically, and it seems like the dobro, lap steel, any kind of lap instruments is nice for that. People that are,
yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely. In fact, I'm glad you mentioned that. I was speaking to a gentleman online. He runs the company Easy Slide. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them. His name is Basil.
Oh yeah, Basil. Yeah,
Yeah, he has the company. I don't know if you can read this. Easy Slide.
Mm-hmm.
And he makes these bars, custom order. And one of the things that he asks is, are there any injuries, arthritis and things like that. So that's something that that could definitely help too. That are people getting into steel guitar, if they have real bad arthritis or they've had, like you said, accidents with saws or something. That's a good avenue to go for a bar that's more custom to the player, if that makes sense.
Yeah, what does he do exactly to make a bar work for somebody that might have arthritis or something?
To my knowledge, he'll adjust the weight and the way a bar is balanced.
Okay.
So this is like a synthetic material, but he actually has I believe it's a steel core, which I don't know if you can see that in there.
Yeah.
And from my understanding, he'll change the weight of the bar or the material he uses to build the core based off of what a player needs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. Because that was something we had discussed when I ordered the bar from him. I have real stiff wrists, and I've never been diagnosed with any kind of arthritis or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But he addressed, he's like, well, what I can do is work on making the bar a little bit lighter for you and things like that. And I imagine he does that with every order.
Yeah.
So it's a good thing, a lot different than the standard Dunlop bars, which are kind of uniform across the board. Something that's a little bit more maneuverable for somebody that might have hand injuries. So
Nice. If you don't mind, can you hold that bar up again? I just want to see what size that was. It looks kind of a lot larger than how does that fit in your hand? Is that larger than a normal kind of lap steel bar, or is that?
It is, yes. So this is the 2 7/8, and I believe that's the measurement. I have a standard Dunlop 918, and you can see the difference here in size.
Nice. Okay.
And then diameter is a little bit different.
Yeah. And how does that the one that like talk a little bit if you can. How does that feel? I don't have one, but I've thought about buying one.
I absolutely love it. For one, I like the length a
Mm-hmm.
lot better than the 918, the Dunlop, which I believe at one point was called the Bird Bar. I believe these were the Jerry Bird signature bars that Dunlop offered for a while. Weight wise, they're about the same. What I noticed playing wise is having the synthetic material on the outside really adds to tone.
Hmm.
It's a lot lighter tone. Since I'm playing a fry pan, I had an issue with getting a metallic buzz anytime I would play, and I did things to kind of compensate for that. But it was always something that was on my mind. How do I get rid of that metallic sound? And when I found out about Basil's company,
Mm-hmm.
I decided that that's something I need to look into. And I kind of looked at a couple of videos on Facebook of demonstrations, and decided that I was going to go that route. I've noticed almost a creamy sound out of it. So
Hmm.
if I were to take the standard Dunlop bar, you know, so that's with so this is the Dunlop, and if I were to do the same thing with the Easy Slide, you kind of get, it's a warmer tone, almost a little bit more full, and I think that
Mm-hmm.
has to do with the size. Um, but it's great. I absolutely love it. A big part of what pushed me to go for a synthetic bar like this is I'm a big Bobby Engano fan,
Oh yeah, me
um,
too.
and I mean his tone on the fry pans is amazing, and that was something that pushed me to go the fry pan route when I was shopping around for a good guitar. And I noticed that he was always playing the synthetic bars rather than the straight steel. And I wasn't getting the tone I wanted out of the standard Dunlop. So I shopped around before I actually went with the Easy Slide, and it gets me a little bit closer to what I'm hearing in my head when I think about my sound.
Yeah.
Um, the big thing that I really like about the bar is the size. So the Easy Slide is the 2 7/8,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe it's 1 7/8. Whereas the 918 is the 1/16. Obviously, there's quite a bit of difference in size, and with my hands, having more bar to control made a big difference. Worked a lot better for slants, doing the split bars that Alan likes to teach.
Yeah.
Um, it made these slants and split bars more obtainable, which was a source of a lot of frustration as I was learning them, because I had issues getting notes in tune,
Mm-hmm.
maybe missing strings as I would go for a slant while playing a piece. So the size difference between the bars really helped. But
Is it
oh, go
oh,
ahead.
is it easier to grip? Like is it got a more of a grippiness to the texture of it?
It does, yes. It doesn't slide out of your hand when you start, if you're sweating a little bit, as much
Mm-hmm.
as the steel bars would. That was another issue I had, is if I was playing outside, or it was a warm day and I was starting to sweat a little bit, I had a hard time controlling the Dunlop. Um, I always felt like I was about to drop it, which of course affects your playings. You kind of lose that confidence. With the Easy Slide, I don't feel like that's so much of an issue.
Yeah.
I'm very confident that I have control over the bar. So
Nice.
the good thing about all that, and kind of getting to find a bar that I'm comfortable with, is I got to learn about tones of different bars. Playing with Stevens bars, things like that, and figuring out, okay, well, why why do certain players use specific bars, or what's the use of having multiple bars,
Yeah.
So looking at it on the sunny side, I got to experience that side of steel playing and kind of gain a little bit more knowledge as to why certain things work and how they work. So it was cool. It's I'm actually hoping to write an article about that in Haumana, as well as different bars and things like that. So
Nice.
yeah, it's definitely
Yeah, I'm still using the, sorry to interrupt.
Oh,
I'm still using the dobro bar, and when you talk about split bars, it's almost impossible to get, that the way that he puts the round part of that bar in between the strings and then pushes down the lower string, or the middle string, I guess it would be, to make the chord in tune.
oh yeah.
This thing, I'm so used to it, but at some point, I know that I wish that Basil made one that had this top and sides, but then had just a perfectly round tip, so I could still do the, actually
Right.
had both of them, this kind of end and then a round tip when I needed it too. That would be great.
That would be, yeah. That's actually a good idea, because I've noticed a lot of players like the grip on like a Stevens bar or a dobro bar. You get a little bit more control and things like that. But that'd be something to talk to him about. That'd be something great, because as far as I know, I haven't seen a dobro bar or anything like that had the round tip.
Yeah.
So that could be a $1 million idea right there.
Or for us, it'd be hundreds of dollars in the steel world.
Yeah.
No, but
yeah.
they do. Shub makes one. I don't have mine, but it's the SP2. It's one I initially used that had that, but it's such a small end. It's not like yours that has that diameter to it,
Right.
I would love to have yours and then just have grooves made on the sides and the top, basically. I think that'd be the perfect bar,
Absolutely. Yeah. And that would work well for, like you said, playing bluegrass too. Because there's a lot more call for having the handle on your bar for bluegrass as you kind of go different positions on the neck.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, this one I'm so used to, but Greg Sardina, I went out there to Maui one time and he tried to use it and he tried to do slants and stuff. And to me, it feels real natural, but he's like, oh man, this feels terrible. He hated this. They all call this the Stevens bar, even though it's not, it's a all kinds of different bars, but that kind with the grooves. Well, cool. Yeah. The other thing I wanted to kind of talk to you about is, don't you have like a punk rock kind of background or something you were telling me about?
Yeah, absolutely. So growing up in Orange County, California, we had city life and we had beach culture, and that's pretty much throughout the entire state of California. And Orange County was a popular punk rock hub. So my first real start in, I guess, playing around town outside of school bands and things like that was playing punk rock music and some rockabilly. And those were some interesting times.
What years are we talking about now with this?
This would have been the early 2000s.
Okay.
So this is after, bands like Green Day and Rancid had kind of done the whole punk rock revival thing. Post pop punk Blink-182 stuff had already kind of petered off. But we used to play around places like the Doll Hut, which is in Anaheim. A couple places in Los Angeles. Like the Knitting Factory used to do a punk rock night. The Whiskey was there, which was very big. But it was night and day difference now. This was a while ago, so I've kind of mellowed out. One of the cool things that I've seen last time I was in California is surf and Hawaiian music are coming back to the beach communities pretty
cool.
strong. There are places like Dawn the Beachcombers, which is there in Seal Beach, just outside of Huntington. And this is it used to be called Sam's Seafood. And and I believe it was built in the 50s, maybe a little bit earlier. But the inside has like a tiki decor. And it really falls back to when the mainland was kind of Hawaii crazy. Blue Hawaii kind of era stuff. So they'll play music from, Soho to Martin Denny and things like that. Arthur Lyman, you'll hear that over the radio. But going back to punk rock, the band X has a side project that plays there regularly. So you'll see some of the people from X come through. Some blues kind of rockabilly bands like the Blasters, Big Sandy. One of the bands I really enjoy is a group called the Hula Girls, which is a Hawaiian themed rockabilly band.
Oh, cool.
And they do regular stays there at Don the Beachcomber, and they're very entertaining. They kind of have a Bill Haley sound, but the songs are geared towards surfing, life in Waikiki, things like that. It's really great stuff.
And what's this place called again?
Don the Beachcombers.
And it's in Anaheim, did you say? Or
this is in Seal Beach in California.
Beach. Gotcha. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. And, it just comes to my mind, this is changing the subject again, but I remember a little bit ago you had held up your lap steel, your Jerry Bird lap steel. Maybe talk a little bit about that. And I don't know much about the history of the fry pan. Maybe talk a little bit about that if you could.
Absolutely. So this is the Jerry Bird fry pan. This was made by S.O.A.R, which was the pedal steel guitar company. To my knowledge, this was put together by Shot Jackson and Jerry Bird. And I believe they started production in the late 70s. This is a 79. This is the short scale model. And the story goes, and I can't confirm any of this, I've actually tried to look up information as well. Jerry commissioned S.O.A.R to have 300 fry pans made as kind of a limited edition signature model. Jerry actually used one, and you can find videos of him in the 80s and 90s playing where he's using one. I believe also short scale is what he used. The story goes that after the first 300 were made, Jerry didn't want to continue with the model. Or there was some agreement to end production.
Okay.
I believe Shot Jackson continued to make the fry pan. And there are stories that the first batch of the post-Jerry Bird model still had Jerry's name on there. Mm. And after some kind of argument and probably a lengthy legal battle, it was changed to have Shot Jackson's name across the neckboard. And I don't know if you can see that, but on the frets here it says Jerry Bird. And then the top is Jerry Bird or JB Fry Pan. So there's no indication of S.O.A.R on here at all.
Nice.
Now, the history of fry pans are actually kind of interesting. The first fry pans were made by Rickenbacker. And that's what you see. Bobby Engano plays quite a bit. Jerry Valdrez also plays a Rickenbacker fry pan. I believe Alan has one as well. To my knowledge, the fry pan was the first mass-produced solid body electric guitar.
Wow.
This would have been in the 1930s, if I'm correct. I might be wrong about the time frame. But they featured a horseshoe magnet, which this model is not an actual horseshoe. It actually just has the cover to kind of mimic the originals.
Okay.
But the way the horseshoe would work is you'd have the pickup sitting inside, and the cover was actually magnets as well. So you would get a very hi-fi sound, much like the Bakelite Rickenbackers are well known for their pickups, and I believe some Rickenbacker basses actually have the horseshoe mounted in there. And that's kind of what gave what was known as the Hawaiian sound to the electric guitars. And of course, in the history of electric guitar, what really brought along popularity of electrifying these instruments was Hawaiian music. I believe Joseph K. Kuku developed the steel guitar in the 1890s. And of course, once he kind of got his technique down and started showing what the Hawaiian guitar was about, it kind of took off like gangbusters. Of course, during this time, Hawaii had become a territory of the United States. So there were a lot of Hawaiian minstrel groups that would travel to the mainland and, over to Asia and Europe playing Hawaiian music. So with the development of steel guitar, or at the time Hawaiian guitar, they were bringing along this technique that nobody was familiar with. As time moves on, we saw developments from National making the tricone resonators and things like that. Now the purpose of that was to make the Hawaiian guitar more audible during a performance. Because if you imagine, you have a band playing acoustic guitars and ukuleles and a singer, and all of a sudden, instead of playing your guitar standard with the sound projecting forward, it's now projecting up towards the ceiling, you're going to have issues cutting through the band. So of course, you see like the Weisenborns have the hollow necks. The next development from there was the National guitars, which were the spun brass and all the things that make National what they are. Shortly after that, there were a series of companies that wanted to electrify steel guitar. And that's really where we start to see electric guitar come to the forefront. Some of the first players that really utilized an electric steel guitar were like Sol Ho'obi'i, Dick McIntyre. And of course, these guys were traveling back and forth from Hawaii to the United States, to Europe, bringing this new technology along with them. Okay. Now, Rickenbacker, being one of the first, if not the first, mass-produced electric guitar, gained instant popularity. Even today, among a lot of players, a Rickenbacker fry pan or a Bakelite are, that's gold. That's the sound for Hawaiian players. So it's really, really kind of interesting. Now, I believe Jerry Bird had commissioned this model when Shot Jackson approached him, because there were no longer fry pans in production during this time. And wanting another signature guitar, I believe that he decided to have a fry pan made to offer that option to new players or collectors. Now, one of the characteristics of these fry pans is a very bright tone, which can be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on what side of the fence you sit. For me, I constantly battle with, to me, what's too bright of a tone. And it takes just kind of playing around and things like that and finding the tone that's satisfying for that day. But you get some positive aspects to the aluminum body as opposed to a wood body. Like you get a little bit more sustain, just like you would out of a National, as opposed to a standard acoustic guitar. So it's very, very interesting. Of course, one of the things I like about it is I don't really have to worry so much about it getting damaged while traveling, as opposed to a wood body guitar or an acoustic. So it's really interesting. One of the things I probably should point out about these models is this is an 8-string. Now, at the time, the most that I had seen on a fry pan was 7. And I'm sure there are models out there that are 8 strings, but I haven't seen too many. Now, this, to my knowledge, comes about from the eras of, Jerry Byrd and Speedy West, when they were cutting records in the 50s and early 40s, when steel guitar was at its most popular. Of course, this is non-pedal steel. A lot of players and companies were going to 8 strings for more chordal options, more capabilities when playing single lines. You can now play down an entire octave or, something like that without having to retune your guitar. So that's something that's really interesting about these Jerry Byrd models, is that they're 8-string fry pans. And I have seen 6-string models as well. But most of the players, like Mark Pruncha, he's using an 8-string Byrd fry pan. And I know Alan has one as well. And I've heard stories of Billy Hugh Len using one for a short time. So
Nice. Now, what do you have that tuned to?
This is a C6, and I'm using an E on top, and I have a low G on my 8-string and a B flat on my 7-string.
Low G. Okay.
Yes.
I know Alan does. Well, he does a lot of tunings, but it seemed like he did the low C, on his the 8th string. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
He does. Yeah. And the reason why I'm using a G is I actually found an arrangement of Chloe, and it's Gabby Pahanui's arrangement, and he has his 8th string tuned to a G in order to accomplish the intro that he's playing in the position that he's playing in. And I kind of just left it. Sometimes I'll drop down to a C on the bottom, which I know Jules Assi did that. He had a C on the bottom and then the B flat and then standard C6.
Yeah. So that G, in comparison with the C, that's if you're moving back and forth, seems like when you'd put it on a C, it would be pretty a floppy string, wouldn't it?
Oh yes, absolutely. Let me.
Because that G, that's because I have A6 strings on mine, and normally it's F sharp, A, C sharp, or F sharp, whatever it is. Yeah, F sharp, A, C sharp, E, F sharp, A, C sharp, E, and that F sharp. When I try to tune that down to a C, it's like, it's real floppy.
Oh yeah, it's so that's playing a C on the G string. And it's you can tell it's low,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's cool. Yeah. Where do you get your strings? Like sometimes I go to juststrings.com or elderly.com. I didn't know if there's another place that you know of to get strings.
I've been using juststrings.com, and I'm actually using the SIT strings.
Okay.
And I really liked juststrings.com because they really price things appropriately. I have a couple other instruments that, I'll do one bulk order for all the strings I need. And, I can go to a music store and either order or buy off the rack for maybe $10 a pop. Whereas Just Strings, you get them for maybe $5-6.
Yeah.
Which is great because, it's, with every other expense that everybody has, if we can find a shortcut, that's definitely a good thing.
Nice. And you're getting, like I said, I get the A6 strings. I think mine are called Scotties. I guess Scotty from St. Louis.
Yes.
But what's the tuning? I guess it's C6 strings that you're getting, but not with the 5th on top. The high G, the high E C6, right?
Yes, correct. Yeah. Okay. I believe these are also the Scotties, and I believe he does offer a high G set, but I get the just with the 3rd on top.
Okay. Nice.
I always have to watch that. I have to look real close when I'm ordering because sometimes I'll go too fast and I'll realize, I did something wrong. But Scotties, and he does have both. In fact, now that I think of it, you can do it with the high G. I actually have a friend out in Louisville that uses the high G, and we'll get together every now and then and play. I'm like, what'd you do? And then it takes a second to kind of readjust, okay, well,
Yeah. So. Yeah. I go back and forth. from liking A6 tuning because it has the fifth on top. And then now I'm practicing a lot of Hawaiian stuff again. And I'm putting it back into the C6 with the third on top. And there's something about that third on top that really forces you, I don't know, to play different. I feel like it sounds a lot more Hawaiian to me than when I play A6 and I'm playing more like Western swing, dobro-ish kind of stuff, I feel like, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. To my ears, like you said, it's very Hawaiian.
Yeah.
Very Hawaiian. And I think that's because, you know, in the old days, a lot of Hawaiian music was major minor chords, where when you move into guys like Jules Ossie, you know, and guys in that era, you know, Danny Stewart, all the Hawaii Call players, they were really playing Hapa, which was mixing, you know, jazz and Hawaiian. So now you're using extended chords where you really, that third makes the difference. You know, if you're looking at, you know, a G7, you know, you won't be able to tell if it's a major or minor without, you know, having the B or B flat, you know.
Yeah.
Of course, you know, there are ways around that. You could always leave the third out and things like that. But that's, to me, I think that's where it comes from when I think about it, you know, having that third.
Yeah, I know Bobby Engano, you know, he plays a 7-string fry pan, doesn't he?
He does, yeah.
And then he tunes it to a C6, I believe, with the fifth on top.
He does, yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. Yeah, but it's crazy. You're talking about that having a brighter sound. And when I hear Bobby, probably of any of the lap steel guys that I like, you know, he has one of the warmest sounds out there. That's crazy that he's getting that on the fry pan, you know?
And I think that might have to do with the pickup as well. And of course his touch too, you know.
Yeah.
All in his hands. But when I hear a true horseshoe pickup compared to what's put in the bird fry pans, they're night and day difference. These pickups, like I said, this is just a plastic cover that looks like the horseshoe. The inside is very similar to what you would see on like a Gibson Console Grande or something like that, or just a standard, maybe even like a Stratocaster pickup. You know, it's that same style. You know, with the. Oh, go ahead.
Have you heard of Rick Aiello? I think he's out of somewhere out east, one of the Carolinas, maybe, or some. Don't quote me on that, but tall guy, long hair, blonde hair.
Oh yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think he makes his own pickups. I think his own horseshoe pickups. I believe
he does. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. It's gonna. Yeah. What do you think about his stuff? Have you thought about ordering one of his pickups or something?
Absolutely. In fact, he's very good friends with a Nashville player, Jeff Kearns. And I've been talking to Jeff off and on, trying to get one of Rick's pickups. I believe Rick is teaching at the moment, so his building has kind of slowed down a little bit due to teaching.
Yeah.
So it kind of comes in. I have to find when he's kind of doing a new batch of his guitars and his pickups, and kind of put an order in while he has the opportunity. But I've heard that a lot of guys will take his pickup and put into these Jerry Bird fry pans. And that's something I've been wanting to do.
Nice. Yeah, I'd be curious what it would do, changing out that pickup, if it'd really make a big difference or not.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, from what I've heard, it's a night and day difference. I know he had Jeff Alhoy check out one of his amplifiers. And I want to say this was at the Fort Collins convention. I could be wrong. It might have actually been in the islands. But there's a video on YouTube of Jeff playing one of Rick's amplifiers. And he also plays one of Rick's guitars. I believe he plays the Tuck Light, which looks like a Rickenbacker B6.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I've never had Never had him on the show, but I'd love to. I've actually never even talked with him, but he seems like a really interesting guy.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I mean, he makes such great products as well. It's everything I've seen from product reviews to video demonstrations. They're great. They're
Nice.
yeah. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, maybe in the summer he'll. I know he's teaching like a science class, isn't he, at a high school somewhere?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. It's I want to say it's a pretty intense science class as well. I was under the impression it was something to do with like physics or something like that. So it's up there. It's definitely an upper level class from what I've heard. So
Wow.
yeah,
Wow. Well, man, it's been great. It's been great talking to you. I know you got to get out of here pretty soon, so I don't want to, run you late or anything. But are you thinking about heading to Fort Collins, you think?
yeah, absolutely. That's something I'm definitely trying to make happen. Um, it's really the closest thing we have to the islands out here, and Allen's festivals as well. At a fraction of the price.
Yeah, and the time too. That flight, man, for
Oh
me at
yeah.
least, from St. Louis to Maui that's a long flight.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And the nice thing, my family lives in Waikiki, so I get to go out there from time to time and catch the Honolulu festivals or the Waikiki festivals.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
but like you said, the tickets and then the flight, and from here it's about 9 hours. So it's
Yeah.
yeah, Fort Collins is right around the corner, so it's a little bit more manageable.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I got to look into that because I thought about it last year, and then I kind of opted not to. But it would be pretty cool to do that. Hopefully I go in moods with my playing, and hopefully I'm still in the Hawaiian mood. As far as a yearly kind of seems like around the spring and summer when it feels more like Hawaii around here, and I get calls for Hawaiian gigs. I get
Oh yeah.
real into a Hawaiian mood of playing.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
I got to have that carry on through the rest of the year, I think.
Oh yeah.
Well, cool. Well, good deal. Well, yeah, is there any websites or anything you can tell people about any of the things we've talked about? S.O.A.R you had mentioned earlier.
Yes.
Yeah.
So S.O.A.R and Guitars for Vets are available. You can find them on the Wounded Warrior website, which I'm not sure if that's a .com or .org.
Yeah. Yeah.
I imagine it's a .org, but you can find that through Wounded Warrior, and for military personnel through the Wounded Warrior Battalion on post or the nearest post. You can request to join in the S.O.A.R program, or request to have S.O.A.R available to your location, and that's run on post through the Army Band on a specific installation, and so that would only take a little bit of communication to have that happen.
Nice.
And then of course Kula Melee, kkulamele.com.
There you go.
That's a great resource, especially for getting in contact with Alan. Your website as well. I'm constantly sending people to your website to do video, check out the videos and things like that, because it's when I first started playing, I was buying videos off your website, because that was I had the time and I could sit there and watch and rewind, and great resource.
Oh, well, thanks,
Definitely.
man. I appreciate that. Yeah, and tell people too where they can find your articles that you're writing too.
Oh, absolutely. So the website is steeltrappings.com.
Okay.
And my article is Haumana. But there are also a lot of great articles on there about vintage guitars. In fact, there's an article that was just put out maybe last month or the month before about utilizing the program Finale for writing music and tabbing things out. So it's really a big resource for steel guitar players. You can hear about these festivals that we've been talking about, as well as kind of learn about who's playing, who's kind of out there right now and kind of doing things. So it's a great resource.
And before we get out of here, maybe your if you can, maybe top 3 albums that at least that you could recommend to our listeners.
Absolutely. In fact, I have a couple here.
Yeah.
So the very, very first one is a must for steel guitar players. This is Alfred Apakah's Greatest Hits. This features Jules Ossie on steel guitar.
Nice.
Great album. If you can't find it on iTunes, it should be available on some of the steel guitar forums, or maybe something like Spotify, things like that. Another one, just for listening purposes, would be Arthur Lyman's Blowin' in the Wind. Now, this doesn't have steel guitar on it, but it features Arthur Lyman, who is a vibraphone player.
Oh, cool.
And his band. And there are a couple Hawaiian standards as well as some pop tunes like Blowin' in the Wind. But the reason why I like that is it really gives you the vibe of being in Hawaii, and it kind of shows a different side of what was happening in Hawaii 50, 60 years ago.
Nice.
And then,
we don't have to limit to 3 either. If you've got several more, I just picked 3 as a random number. So
definitely. Another great one, another great steel guitar album is Hawaii Calls Favorite Instrumentals.
Nice.
Now, this is a couple different artists. Hawaii Calls employed quite a few steel guitar players over the years. But if you're interested in playing Hawaiian music, any of the Hawaii Calls programs are great because they were recorded live. So you get to kind of feel what was going on, how players approached a song. And you get to hear a lot of the greats that are quoted through Steel Guitar Forum and various websites, and kind of really experience things as they were happening, being that they were live recordings. So those are, I would say those are definitely my top 3 for steel guitar players and musicians in general.
Cool. And I noticed that those are vinyl. Any thoughts on listening to vinyl albums of old Hawaiian music?
I would say it's worth the experience. There are a lot of people that prefer MP3s, CDs, and things like that. And I found that when you listen to a vinyl album, you actually get the stereo effect as it was intended to be heard. Most record players, have 2 speakers, not all of them, but you really hear a lot more on vinyl. In my ears, anyway, I hear a little bit more. You can hear what kind of room they were playing in. Whereas, perfect example, that Arthur Lyman album was recorded on stage at the Hawaiian Village in Waikiki. And back in the day, they used to have a concert hall that was specially built for performances. And it was this huge dome that was built to actually amplify acoustics without needing a whole lot of stage volume. Huh. And so this record was recorded on stage in this big amphitheater under this dome. And you hear so much more. You hear natural reverb. You can hear what side of the stage a band member is on, because that's the way it just kind of came through the microphones. You don't really get that so much on MP3, just due to the way MP3s are compressed and put together. And of course, nowadays we use digital recording formats, which kind of adds and takes away from sound at the same time. There's something to be said about tube consoles and things like that, but that's a whole another science.
Yeah, we got to have another podcast where we just talk about if you're getting into recording. I'd love to geek out with you on recording and pick your brain too. I'm sure I could learn a bunch from you too.
Yeah, that'd be great. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, cool. I got to check out those albums too, especially the vibraphone one. I use Spotify quite a bit just because it's so easy to use, but maybe it's on there. I don't know. I'd have to do a search,
I believe it is, because I'll use Spotify when I'm doing things around the house or if I'm in the car,
Yeah.
and I have like an Arthur Lyman playlist, and I have all the steel guitar players. I have a lot of rockabilly and punk rock too that that I have saved just to you know. But I mean, it's great, and I mean, as far as vinyl goes, if you have the means to find vinyl, like if there's a place near you that sells it, it's definitely worth checking out. But it's definitely not a necessity either.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people kind of get turned off by vinyl too because it's hard to find. Of course, there's iTunes always, and a lot
Yeah.
of the modern artists are available on iTunes, and I would definitely recommend to anybody interested in Hawaiian music. That's a good place to start. Is especially with everyone having a smartphone nowadays. You can get it in the touch of a hand. So
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. There is something nostalgic too to hear the scratching of the record, and then to hear the old style music, Hawaiian music, and all that. I think on vinyl, I have a few albums on vinyl, but it kind of brings you almost back to that era.
oh yeah,
You hear
absolutely.
just the nature in which you're listening to it. Just that I don't want to say lo-fi, but I mean compared to what we have now, maybe just the scratching of the record, all that kind of adds to the whole sound of the music, I feel like, and the vibe of it.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely, and the nice thing about vinyl is, when you put it on, you're in for the ride. You know, you almost have to make your listening experience your activity for the time, because it's you got to make sure you're rotating the disc, and
Yeah.
and of course with vinyl they warp very easily, so you can't leave them laying flat for too long, so you really can't walk away and get distracted. It's kind of interesting. It's very involved process, and that's
Yeah.
something I love. It's great.
Well, that's cool. Well, thanks, Steve. Yeah, hopefully we can do another one of these, and thanks for doing this. It's been really informative. I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Well, maybe I'll see you out in Fort Collins, and if not, then maybe some other time. But it's been a blast. Thanks
Yeah,
so much.
absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, we'll talk to you later.
All right. Aloha.